welcome to Posse Presents. This is the Saturday before Halloween, which is my favorite holiday. Got a little Halloween-y kind of shirt on, and that's about the best I do for Halloween, because I'm not a dress-up type person, not by a long shot, unless, you just want to throw a witch's hat on and make me complete. But I always say, I'm scary enough when I'm dressed like me. I don't need to try to be anything else. But anyway, we're going to start tonight with a little bit of a celebration. Zach, can we have our little celebration picture? Oh, Zach. In there running his little mouth. Posse Presents has hit a milestone on YouTube of 5,000 hits. So, a little pat on the back for me, and a great big thanks to all of you. For those of you who watch live, I appreciate you more than you'll ever know. And for those of you who can't watch live, or who, ever want to see my face again during the week, there's every show is uploaded on YouTube from the beginning, including the intro. And 5,000 hits is a pretty big milestone for me. I had hoped in my, somehow to get there by the end of the year. That would make, my coming up on my second year of doing the show. But we got there early, and I am really, I'm over the moon over that. That's really, to me, that's pretty cool. That means somebody somewhere is paying some kind of attention, and this is not all for naught. And, it feels good. So a little bit of yay, a little bit of woohoo. And again, I thank you all. I'll take the camera back, and just so you all know, every Saturday night when I get home, I do the upload, and usually, barring any unforeseen instances, the show is available on YouTube by Sunday morning. Sometimes I even find that before I can start sharing it all over Facebook, which is what I do, I put it up on the Posse Presents Facebook page and my own page and a couple other pages that I'm involved with. Sometimes people have already watched it, which is kind of cool, because it just means that you guys are beating me to the punch. And I know that a lot of times my guests like to share as well, and they're eager, and I can understand that. For me, now it's almost 2 years into it, it's yeah, the show is going to upload, but I understand the excitement, and it's cool, and I'm glad that people are excited to come on. But anyway, today is Pit Bull Awareness Day. This has been Pit Bull Awareness Month. There were a lot of events today, walks and gatherings, and there have been all month long. But I'm just going to give you a little FYI as far as temperament testing for pit bulls. Zach, can we have that little picture up? There are certain measures that, are done, certain things that are done to test a dog's temperament, all around. The pit bull does very, very well, way up there, right under the lab. These are your top breeds, and it's, they're the most tolerant dogs tested by whatever this American Temperament Test Society. It almost sounds bogus, but I'm sure there has to be a standard. Pit bulls are not the killer dogs and the mean dogs and the biters and the scary animals that they're made out to be. And, I know that I go on and on and on about that, but, they really, really are wonderful dogs. There are just stereotypes and mindsets that go along with, these dogs. And, I can't lie. There was a time when I was leery of them, and I'm not proud of that fact as an animal person and an animal lover and an animal rescuer and anything else you might want to call me, an animal advocate. I mean, I've always had a love for animals, and years and years and years ago, I worked next door to a vet, and there was some sort of an incident outside in their kennels. And this woman's screaming for help, and I hear what sounded like a little dog screaming, and, the growling and barking of a bigger dog, and, it's like Superman, jump into the telephone booth, put on my cape, and rush off to help, because nobody was helping this woman. And come to find out that for some reason, there was this little fluffy dog put into an outside run next to a pit bull, and I don't know what happened, but the pit bull had grabbed a hold of the little dog's paw through the chain link fence and wouldn't let go. There was blood everywhere, this little dog screaming, the pit bull wouldn't let go, and wow, doesn't all the stereotypical stuff that you've ever heard about pit bulls come into your head? Well, I went busting through there like a maniac until, I scared the receptionist. She was on the phone. I don't know how anybody doesn't hear what's going on outside like that, but I scared the receptionist off the phone, and she, ran to get help. I went busting in the back of the vet, screaming and hollering and carrying on, and finally somebody came, and they had to sedate the pit bull to make it let go. There was blood everywhere. The woman had used a hose to try to make the dog let go, and I walked away from there very disturbed and very conflicted, because there's a whole lot that I was conflicted about. Was how does that happen at a vet's office? What's going to happen to the little dog? How injured was the little dog? How would I feel if that were my little dog? I would I would own that vet at the end of the day. What was going to happen to that pit bull? Was it the first incident? Was that poor dog going to get put down? Was this a vicious dog? I mean, it was very conflicting for me for a lot of years. You do have these experiences, and you hear all of the propaganda that is put out about them. But I found, I'll take the camera back, Zach. I think people are probably just as through looking at that as I am. Until I got involved in the shelter that I was at, and I saw a lot of pit bulls, and this is in Waterbury, where there's a very large population of them. I still had that image in my mind, and I got to know them, and I didn't I had to go into it with an open mind and an open heart, because these were the dogs that were coming through the shelter. And I'll tell you, you all should know that I am a big pit bull person now, because they're not what they're cracked up to be as far as these awful dogs. That incident was something that should not have happened. That's not something that you could necessarily say was a pit bull thing. You shouldn't put dogs in the wire kennels like that, where they can get to each other. That's just insane. So that was definitely something that vet's office did wrong. There should have been some sort of a solid divider where the dogs couldn't actually interact. Who would guess that a little dog would get pulled through, the link fence? That was pretty horrible. But I really honestly can't say that was necessarily a pit bull thing. Any dog could have done that. If it was a dog with a high prey drive, if it was a dog who didn't like other dogs, selective dog that didn't like little dogs. I mean, there's a lot of different scenarios, and just like people are individuals, so are dogs, and you don't know what their triggers are unless you know the dog. So did the vet know the dog very well? Should they have put a space in between and not put them right next to each other? You can go on and on and on, but I can tell you that it just really bothered me. That whole thing really bothered me, but it really bothered me now that I was feeling a certain way about a particular dog and feeding into everything you see and hear. And really, this is a lot of years ago, farther back than a lot of the pit bull hype these days. So that's my little tale that I will tell about how I'm not proud of the fact that for a time I was conflicted is the best word I can keep using. In any case, speaking of pit bulls, there are a few of them at the Bridgeport Animal Control that I want to show you guys, in the hopes that you will share them, in the hopes that you will perhaps adopt or foster. Bridgeport had a bad couple of, I want to say rounds of death is the best way I could do it, recently. And there are some dogs that have been there for a while. We're going to start with Littles Zach, if you can just show her picture real quick for me. Littles is a very sweet girl. She doesn't seem to mind other dogs. She's beautiful. I love that patch over her eye. But she's there and needing to get out. We also have Pumpkin, if we can show Pumpkin, who looks like just such a sweetheart. She's 7 years old, and at any age, but at that age, she's a girl who deserves better than to be in a kennel like that, sleeping on a concrete floor. And she looks like a mix, but she's just beautiful. And of course, you got to figure why she's been there over a month, which I can't imagine. She's so pretty. Another dog that has been there since August is Penny. If we can see Penny, she is just about a year old and has clearly spent what amounts to a good portion of her life so far in Bridgeport. She's, got that whole probably black dog thing going against her, unfortunately. And, the black dogs and the brindle dogs are historically the last ones to get adopted. It's like a stigma, and I don't understand it, because I love a black dog and I love a brindle dog. So, that just puts me, I guess, in that crazy minority, but that's apparently where I belong. But yep, she's been there since August, and they describe her as being calm, quiet, and loving. The next one is Chanel, who is 5 years old. Zach, can we get her up? Oh, look at those ears. Gotta love those crazy ears that some of these dogs have, which is far better than the ones that are so brutally chopped off, because that's just far beyond disturbing. But anyway, Chanel is 5 years old, and she's also been there since August. Unfortunately, her paws and her nose are raw from some of the stress that she's undergoing. I'm sure she's rubbing her nose on the kennel. I'm sure she's jumping around. She might be licking herself. These animals get stressed out in the shelter environment. It's noisy, it's cold, it's not home. They're eating food that is just, whatever it is that they feed them, which doesn't necessarily mean it's a low quality food, but it's, maybe not what their particular system would do well on. Some dogs just need a little more of this and a little more of that and a little less of something else in their diet, just like people do. They have allergies and they have reactions to things, but very often you do see these poor dogs with raw noses, and they start licking themselves, and their tails are banging up against the concrete and they start to bleed. It can be physically as well as emotionally very difficult for these animals to be so confined for so long. But that's Chanel. And if you are interested in any of these dogs or any of the other ones that they might have in Bridgeport, their address is 236 Evergreen Street in Bridgeport, and their phone number is 203-576-7727. That's 203-576-7727. Let's flip through each one of those again, Zach, and then you can give me back the camera. But there are definitely rescues that would be interested in pulling these dogs if they had foster homes. So by all means, please consider fostering any one of these dogs through a rescue, which is, always the wisest way to do it, because then you have the backing of the rescue. And, it just makes it easier, and you are not responsible for trying to home the animal, which, if you remember, I always try to say, if you can align yourself with a rescue, you're much better off, because there are monsters out there, and people who present themselves as being, worthy of having an animal most often, well, I don't want to say most often because that's not true, but very often are not, because they just don't have the right intentions and they will fool you. Speaking of monsters, I will take the camera, Zach. There was a horrible story that broke earlier this week about a shelter in Macon, Georgia, It's a no-kill shelter, and it's called All About Animals. This shelter was broken into, and about 30 dogs were let loose in the yard. And, you know, that in itself is mayhem. Unthinkable that somebody's got nothing better to do but break into a shelter. But these dogs were, some of these dogs fought. I imagine that would be the incentive, you know, for ha-has. You let all the dogs out and let them fight. Now, yes, there were bully breeds, but I guess they weren't all bully breeds, but they were engaged in fighting. There were 3 dogs killed and a good 14 injured, some of them worse than others, and all of the dogs were traumatized, as you can imagine. One of the injured dogs seemed to have been hurt by a human, deliberately cut by a human. And, you know, if you can imagine, you know, the shelter people know which dogs do well with other animals, which dogs get along with each other. You know, sometimes there's that whole dog selectiveness. But you throw 30 dogs, God knows what these people did to make things any worse, but you throw 30 dogs together with all of the different personalities and all of their different needs. They're scared, they're stressed, they're lashing out. You know, one little scuffle turns into a huge free-for-all. It's like a bar fight. Come on, think about it. But, you know, you can't say it was because of the bully breeds or, you know, who's to blame for the fighting. But, you know, the monsters are out there. They really are. How do you think of this stuff? You're just going to break into a shelter and throw the dogs all together and let them fight. I mean, who knows if they brought their own dogs, you know, and tried to use this, you know, for sport. I mean, I can't imagine. There are 1,000 different things that you can think of, you know, what these people were really looking for. I mean, clearly some sort of sick, sadistic entertainment. Zach, we have a picture of the 3 dogs who were killed, and we'll put that up. There's all 3 of those guys there. One of the dogs survived being shot. I think one had 3 legs. You know, there was no sense to this. These dogs are homeless. They're in a shelter. They're being taken care of. Their lives are safe because it is a no-kill shelter, and you have animals, the people who are animals, break in and traumatize these animals in such a way. There is a number set up if anybody knows anything about this. Now, I realize that, you know, we're in Connecticut, but, you know, this does go on the internet, and people do pay attention, and people do have connections to other places in the world. So if there's anybody who knows anything about this, they're asked to call 877-68-CRIME. That's 877-68-CRIME. And yeah, the monsters are out there. I couldn't believe this when I was reading it. You know, break into a shelter and just let these dogs have at each other, and, you know, 3 of them dead, 14 of them injured, and if that wasn't bad enough, somebody had to actually a human physically harmed a dog. I mean, you know, just stop already. Go kill each other if you're going to have to do something like that. Leave the animals out of it. I'm sorry. I'll take the camera back. And, you know, I opened up talking about Halloween. And Halloween is a great time for people who enjoy the spooky and the creepy and all that stuff like I do. It's also a big deal for, you know, adults to go out and party and get dressed, and it's a big deal for kids to go out trick-or-treating. You know, that's changed a lot over the years. You know, it used to be you just go out in your neighborhood and trick-or-treat, and now, like, parents are driving kids to other neighborhoods and trying to keep kids from going to door-to-door things and, you know, having parties instead and whatever. But the fact remains that your pets are at risk on Halloween. And, you know, yes, I'm going to talk about this every year and every holiday, and it's just my little soapbox, and I can't apologize for it. But, you know, if you're expecting trick-or-treaters, and even if you're not expecting trick-or-treaters, you should keep your pets inside Outside is not where they belong, not cats, not dogs. There's a lot of activity, there's a lot of people, there's, just a lot of, people who are dressed up and, in masks and costumes, and it's going to throw a dog's perception of what's going on. And if you've got a slightly fearful animal, it's definitely going to trigger some of those fears. You've also got the fact that, people are mischievous on Halloween, some of them. And you have to think like the enemy. I hate to say it, but you really, in order to safeguard your animals, you really have to kind of think outside of your little comfort zone of the things that could happen. If you're going to be answering your door a lot and for an extended period of time, or even for a short period of time, because it only takes a second for something bad to happen, keep your dog in another room. Make sure your cat is locked away in another room. You're opening the door, you're closing the door. You're opening the door, you got strangers, your dog wants to get involved. What happens if your dog slips out? Now you've got, a dog that might run off because it's scared, and now you've got a lost dog, and nobody wants that. If your cat gets outside and you don't realize it until later, God only knows where your cat's going to end up. The worst case scenario, if you've got a dog who's like afraid of someone at your door, if he bites, it may be not because you have a vicious dog, but because the dog's afraid. They don't understand this is Halloween and it's trick or treat, and it's just a costume. They don't understand. As always, keep candy away from your pets. If you've got kids that are going out trick or treating, or if you've just got that big bowl that you're waiting to hand out, keep your pets away from it. That candy is harmful to your animals. The chocolate is no good, the sugar is no good, and if you've certain ingredients just are really harmful. And if you've got a black cat, you definitely want to keep a black cat inside on Halloween, because there are certain sections or sectors of people who seek out a black cat on Halloween. There's just bad things that happen to animals, and certain ones in particular. And black cats are believed to be a target animal at Halloween, and they're used for some satanic rituals. Black cats to some represent evil, and believe it or not, I learned this many years ago, white cats are also a target in satanic rituals. They represent purity and virginity. So depending on what the ritual happens to be, both black and white cats, as well as cats in general, are at risk. And why would you want, to put your animal at risk? It's bad enough in New Canaan there was a decapitated cat and a decapitated bird landed up on 2 different properties. So, like I keep saying, the monsters are out there. Shelters are wise to hold off adoptions of black or white cats until after Halloween. There are some who, for the whole month of October, just really kind of hold off on those adoptions. And of course, that's a strain on space, but, you want to protect the animals, and it's the wise thing to do. So keep your animals inside, keep your dogs inside, keep your cats inside. On the same vein of the white and the black cats being targeted, I found out something new today when I was looking up some of this stuff. There are actually certain breeds of dog that are targeted for these rituals, and it kind of when I read the list, you kind of understand that whole guarding the gates of hell thing. The Rottweiler, the Doberman, and the Great Dane are all targets. So if you've got any of those at home, that's you definitely want to keep that in mind as as time goes forward. Okay, I'm getting that 3-minute mark or so. Alrighty. I've got to give a quick shout out to a guy at work that came into my job, and we started talking, and it was kind of amusing because he's talking about meat, and I'm a vegetarian, so here we go. I go into my whole spiel of nothing with a heartbeat, nothing with a mama, nothing with a face. So we started engaging in this conversation, and it was actually pretty cool because he was very curious and very interested in what I had to say, which, you know, not everybody is. You know, a lot of people are like, oh, well, you know, I like my meat and, you know, this and that and blah, blah, blah. So we talked about vegetarianism and what do you eat and the difference of, you know, being a vegan and the whole dairy thing. And I even went into my whole spiel about palm oil and different ingredients, and I'll talk about palm oil another night. But he was actually very receptive, and he came back later and he thanked me for all the information, and, you know, he really seemed interested in, you know, what I had to say and perhaps making some changes in his life. So people, if you've got something that you're passionate about, don't ever stop talking about it, because you never know whose life you can touch and what kind of changes you could make. Really quickly, I want to congratulate my dear friend Mark Poveromo on his new venture. He's opened up a second store, so good luck with that. Congratulations. Wish you all the best. We're pretty much winding down. How long we have, Zach?
About a little over a minute and 15 seconds.
A minute? How precise is that? A minute and 15 seconds. Anyway, next week we are going to have Amy Saunders and her friend come on and talk about their search for Callie here in Waterbury, who is still missing. They've gone on some very big adventures looking for Callie. They've rescued a whole bunch of other animals, and we will talk about that as well. So stay tuned for Amy, and I'm going to probably say goodnight now. All right, well, I'm going to say goodnight anyway. You can roll the credit, Zach, and I am going to say peace, love, and dogs. Don't forget, this week is the Howling for Help for Wolf Central. That's on Wednesday night. There's still time to get involved in that. And there's the poster back there. You can check them out, Wolf Central on Facebook. It's going to be a benefit for Mission Wolf. And we are going to say goodnight.